In Money Watch, COVID-19 is taking a toll on the U.S. economy in a lot of different ways, impacting everything from the travel industry to restaurants and the housing market. A shortage of homes for sale continues to boost prices up by double digits across the country. Those looking to buy are being pushed to extremes to win bids. So Aimee Picchi is here to break it all down for us. Thank you for joining us this morning. So full disclosure, my husband is in the real estate business, and so I've sort of had a front row seat to watching how the pandemic has impacted housing. And initially there was a feeling that, well, no one was going to buy a house because there was so much uncertainty, and that lasted a handful of months, and then people were right back out there. How much of an increase is the U.S. seeing in the housing market right now?
Yeah, that's right, Anne Marie. I mean, it's really interesting to see what happened in the last year. Initially, with the pandemic hitting the U.S. a year ago, people stopped looking at houses, but it was really short-lived. And then things took right off after that. And it's really impacting the housing market in a very unusual way. Look at April, statistics for April. The number of listings declined by 50%, actually more than 50%. The median listing price rose 17%, and that's after the typical house price, sale price, rose 15% in 2020. So the trend is just continuing with lower inventory, and that's pushing buyers to bid up houses because people want homes right now, and that's also tied to the pandemic. Some of the trends we're seeing are very unusual, but it feeds into long-term demographic trends as well as the pandemic. For instance, there are almost 5 million millennials turning 30 every year. And that's the prime decade when people want to buy homes, they want to settle down. So you have a huge influx of millennials who are ready and willing to buy homes. On the other side of it, you have low interest rates, and those have been kept low partially because of the pandemic. So that's making it more affordable to buy a home. Except, of course, that you have these incredibly high prices and people are bidding up prices in markets across the U.S. And this isn't only in New York or San Francisco. Actually, those markets took more of a hit. But you're seeing markets like Toledo, Allentown, and Pennsylvania have huge price increases.
Yeah, that's so true. And so if you are a buyer and you're out there, you have to get creative. At least where I live, I'm not really seeing anything that is going for asking. It's certainly above asking, but then, you know, you're still in competition. Some people are showing up with cash. So what are some of the things that buyers are waiving or foregoing now so that they can get the winning bid on a home?
Yeah, I mean, this is really unusual. The realtors and economists I spoke to said they've never seen a market like this before. And so what's happening is that because there's so much competition for a limited number of homes on the market, is that buyers are going to what in normal times would be considered extremes to win a bid. And a lot of those techniques include waiving contingencies. And contingencies are conditions. Basically, one of the most common ones is the inspection. Before the pandemic, people would insist on, I need an inspection on the house before we can close, because you're taking on a lot of risk when you buy a home. You want to make sure, all right, the foundation isn't cracked, the roof isn't going to fall in, this house is going to be a good investment. But the problem is that there's so many people willing to buy the homes that are out there that buyers are waiving that contingency. They're saying, I'm going to buy that house even without an inspection. And that seems like, taking on a lot more risk for buyers. And that's something that buyers need to really think through and maybe take a couple of steps to try to protect themselves if they can. One buyer I spoke to said, well, I did waive the inspection, but I did a walkthrough inspection. So while I was touring the home, I brought an inspector with me, and they checked out just the basics, like just to make sure that foundation's okay, the roof's okay. The little things, though, like the more thorough inspection that you would do in a typical closing, he did not get done. And so, that's something that, buyers have to be comfortable with if they're in a very hot market.
What are economists saying, though, about this market? We know there are ups and there are downs. Things have been trending upward for a while now, but we also know there's a significant, portion of the population that was devastated economically by the pandemic. So the people who were able to keep working and keep their jobs, this has been sort of a come up for them, but a lot of people weren't able to. Are economists saying that things will cool off at any point? What's the prediction?
Yeah, I mean, the prediction is that things will slow down a little bit, maybe even out a little bit. Although they're not predicting bargains. They're saying, if you're hoping to find a bargain later this year, it's probably not going to happen. But they do predict that more inventory will come on the market later this year, partially as sellers. Actually, one reason why there's a tight inventory is sellers don't want to, or homeowners don't want to list their homes because they're worried, how am I going to find a home? If I sell my home, the market's so tight, I'm worried that I won't be able to find a new house. So they're predicting that as things ease up a little bit, more people will list their homes. So you see more inventory, and that should even things out. Like maybe you won't see those high price increases that we've been seeing so far this year. So they're saying if you can hold off, it might not be a bad idea to wait a little bit longer. The other thing that economists told me is if you are a buyer that you think you're only going to be in a house for less than 3 years, because of the costs right now of buying a home, many people have to offer over asking price, and the just costs of buying a home, like the closing prices, that maybe you should wait. If you're a long-term buyer, you're going to be in a house for more than 3 years, fine, that's a different equation. But if you're going to sell quickly, maybe you need to wait until things kind of die down a little bit or become a little bit more normal.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Aimee Picchi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
So if you're in the housing market, you're wondering what is going on, be sure to check out Aimee's article on CBSNews.com to learn more about COVID's impact on the real estate market.